Oliver Twist begins his life in the grim setting of a workhouse in a small English town, a place emblematic of the harsh conditions imposed on the poor during the Victorian era. Born an orphan, Oliver's entry into the world is marked by tragedy, as his mother dies shortly after his birth, leaving him alone and vulnerable. From his earliest days, Oliver is subjected to the indifference and cruelty of a society that views the impoverished as burdens rather than individuals deserving of care and dignity. The workhouse system, designed ostensibly to provide for the destitute, is instead a place of degradation, offering only the barest sustenance and harsh discipline to its inmates. As a young boy, Oliver grows up under the watchful and unsympathetic eye of Mr. Bumble, the beadle, who enforces the strict and oppressive rules of the workhouse. The children in the workhouse are starved, both of food and affection, and Oliver's life becomes a bleak routine of hunger and fear. One of the most iconic moments in Oliver's early life occurs when, driven by desperation, he approaches the workhouse master and utters the fateful words, "Please, sir, I want some more." This simple request for additional gruel, made on behalf of himself and the other starving children, is met with outrage. The authorities, scandalized by Oliver's audacity, decide to punish him severely. He is labeled as insolent and ungrateful, a dangerous child who must be dealt with. To rid themselves of Oliver, the workhouse board advertises him for apprenticeship, offering him to anyone willing to take the boy off their hands. Oliver is eventually placed with an undertaker named Mr. Sowerberry. Life in the Sowerberry household proves to be no better than the workhouse. Though Mr. Sowerberry himself is somewhat indifferent, his wife treats Oliver with outright hostility, and Noah Claypole, an older apprentice, takes every opportunity to bully and humiliate him. Oliver's position in the household is one of servitude and scorn, and he endures constant reminders of his lowly status. The turning point comes when Noah, emboldened by his position, insults Oliver's deceased mother. The comment ignites a spark of rebellion in Oliver, and he retaliates by striking Noah. This act of defiance leads to severe consequences, as Mrs. Sowerberry and Noah exaggerate the incident to make Oliver appear violent and unmanageable. Mr. Bumble is summoned to reprimand Oliver, and the boy is beaten and locked away as punishment. The sense of injustice becomes overwhelming for Oliver, who realizes that no matter how hard he tries to comply with the demands of those around him, he will always be treated as inferior. Faced with the prospect of spending the rest of his childhood in such oppressive conditions, Oliver decides to take a bold step. Under the cover of darkness, he escapes from the Sowerberry's home and sets out on foot for London, a city he has heard of as a place where opportunities abound. The journey to London is long and arduous, and Oliver, still a child, faces many dangers along the way. He travels alone, with no money or provisions, relying on the kindness of strangers and his own resilience to keep moving forward. As Oliver approaches the city, he is both hopeful and apprehensive. He dreams of a better life, free from the cruelty he has endured, but he is also aware of the risks that come with venturing into the unknown. His innocence and naivety make him particularly vulnerable, and he soon finds himself drawn into a world far more treacherous than he could have imagined. Yet, as he steps into the bustling streets of London, Oliver carries with him an unyielding determination to survive, setting the stage for the trials and revelations that will define his journey. This section of Oliver's life illustrates the systemic injustices faced by the poor in 19th century England. From the workhouse to the Sowerberry household, Oliver's experiences expose the cruelty and indifference of a society that prioritizes control over compassion. His escape to London marks the beginning of a new chapter, one fraught with danger, but also filled with the possibility of change. Oliver's story is a poignant reminder of the resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity, and the enduring hope for a better future. Upon reaching London, Oliver Twist is both overwhelmed and intrigued by the chaotic vibrancy of the city. It is a place unlike any he has ever known, filled with opportunities, but also riddled with dangers that are invisible to someone as innocent as he. Almost immediately, Oliver falls into the orbit of Jack Dawkins, a sly and charismatic boy of about his age who introduces himself as the Artful Dodger. The Dodger's demeanor is friendly and welcoming, and he offers Oliver a place to stay, promising food and companionship, comforts that have been entirely absent from Oliver's life until now. Eager for a reprieve from hunger and loneliness, Oliver follows him without hesitation. Jack leads Oliver to a dilapidated hideout in the heart of London, where he meets Fagin, an older man with a sinister air who oversees a group of young pickpockets. Fagin's demeanor is initially warm and inviting, presenting himself as a kind protector of the street boys. He offers Oliver food, shelter, and a sense of belonging, which the boy eagerly accepts. However, the true nature of Fagin's operation soon becomes clear. Under the guise of a benevolent guardian, Fagin is, in fact, a criminal mastermind who trains his young charges to steal for his personal gain. Oliver, naive and trusting, does not immediately understand the implications of Fagin's work. The other boys in the gang, led by the confident Dodger, treat their thievery as a thrilling game, showing off their skills with pride. Oliver, however, feels uneasy about their activities, sensing instinctively that something is wrong. Fagin, recognizing Oliver's moral hesitation, begins to manipulate the boy, attempting to mold him into a loyal member of his crew. He flatters Oliver while subtly threatening him, creating a web of dependency and fear that makes it difficult for the boy to leave. One day, Fagin decides it is time for Oliver to prove his worth. He sends the boy out with the Artful Dodger and another gang member, Charlie Bates, to observe their craft. Oliver, still unaware of their true intentions, accompanies them into the bustling streets. It is here that Oliver witnesses the Dodger and Charlie pickpocket a wealthy gentleman, Mr. Brownlow. The crime is swift and skillful, but Oliver's horrified reaction gives him away. As the Dodger and Charlie flee, Oliver is left behind and is mistakenly accused of the theft. Caught and brought before a magistrate, Oliver faces the very real prospect of imprisonment. He is terrified and alone, unable to defend himself against the accusations. However, Mr. Brownlow, a kind and discerning man, notices Oliver's genuine innocence and decides to intervene. After a witness clears Oliver of the crime, Mr. Brownlow takes pity on the boy and brings him to his home in the suburban neighborhood of Pentonville. For the first time in his life, Oliver experiences genuine kindness and comfort. Mr. Brownlow and his housekeeper, Mrs. Bedwin, care for him as if he were their own, providing him with food, warmth, and a sense of safety that is entirely new to him. Oliver begins to thrive in this environment, his natural sweetness and gratitude endearing him to his benefactors. However, his reprieve is short-lived. Fagin, furious at losing a potential asset, conspires to bring Oliver back into his fold. He enlists the help of Nancy, a young woman associated with his gang who is deeply conflicted about her role in Fagin's scheme. Despite her rough exterior and ties to the criminal underworld, Nancy has a kind heart and feels sympathy for Oliver. Nevertheless, she is bound by loyalty and fear to Fagin and his most dangerous associate, Bill Sikes. Nancy and Bill track Oliver down and, under the guise of rescuing him, forcibly return him to Fagin. Oliver's despair at being torn away from the security of Mr. Brownlow's home is profound. Back in Fagin's clutches, he is subjected to a more aggressive form of coercion. The older man no longer feigns kindness. Instead, he makes it clear that Oliver has no choice but to comply with his demands. Fagin uses threats and intimidation to break Oliver's spirit, forcing him to assist in criminal activities. Fagin's manipulation reaches a climax when Oliver is compelled to participate in a burglary orchestrated by Bill Sikes. The target is a remote country house, and Oliver's role is to enter the property through a small window and unlock the door for the others. Terrified and desperate to escape, Oliver resolves to warn the household of the impending crime. However, before he can act, the burglary goes wrong, and Oliver is shot in the ensuing chaos. Left behind by Sikes and his accomplices, Oliver is discovered by the residents of the house he was meant to rob. Despite his injuries and the circumstances under which they find him, they take pity on the boy, recognizing his inherent goodness. As Oliver is nursed back to health, the story takes a critical turn. The people who care for him are not only kind but also connected to a series of revelations that will unravel the mysteries of Oliver's past and the forces that continue to shape his fate. This section of Oliver's journey delves deeply into the moral ambiguity of the people he encounters, highlighting the fine line between survival and corruption. It underscores the vulnerability of children like Oliver, who are at the mercy of a society that often fails to protect them from exploitation. Yet, amidst the darkness, glimmers of hope and compassion emerge, paving the way for the possibility of redemption. Oliver's fate takes a turn when he is discovered after the failed burglary by the kind-hearted inhabitants of the targeted home, Mrs. Maleye and her adoptive niece, Rose. Despite the shocking circumstances under which they find him, injured and seemingly complicit in a crime, they immediately sense his innocence and vulnerability. Their compassion leads them to take Oliver in, nurse him back to health, and protect him from further harm. For the first time in his life, Oliver experiences not just kindness, but a sense of belonging, as Mrs. Maleye and Rose treat him as a member of their family rather than a burden or tool for exploitation. As Oliver recovers, he opens up about his past, sharing the hardships he has endured and his longing for a life free of fear and abuse. Rose, struck by his purity of heart despite everything he has suffered, becomes deeply attached to him. Her unwavering support and affection give Oliver the strength to confront the trauma of his past and imagine a future filled with hope. However, the peaceful respite he finds in their home is shadowed by the lingering threat of Fagin and his network, who remain determined to recapture him and draw him back into their web of crime. Fagin, realizing that Oliver's knowledge of their operations could jeopardize his game, becomes increasingly desperate to reclaim him. He turns to Bill Sikes, who is equally motivated by self-interest and the need to silence any potential threat to his criminal activities. However, tensions rise within the gang, particularly with Nancy, who has grown increasingly disillusioned with their life of crime. Nancy's guilt over her role in bringing Oliver back to Fagin weighs heavily on her, and she begins to dream of a way to help the boy escape permanently. Nancy secretly meets with Rose Maleye, risking her life to share critical information about Fagin's plans and the looming danger to Oliver. In this clandestine meeting, Nancy reveals not only her desire to save Oliver, but also her inner conflict and inability to leave the criminal world herself. She is bound by fear of Sikes and her complex loyalty to Fagin, yet her compassion for Oliver drives her to act courageously. Rose, moved by Nancy's bravery and sincerity, promises to do everything in her power to protect Oliver and ensure his safety. Meanwhile, a deeper mystery surrounding Oliver's origins begins to unfold. Mr. Brownlow, who has been searching for Oliver since his sudden disappearance, reconnects with Mrs. Maleye and Rose. Together, they piece together clues about Oliver's parentage, leading to the discovery that he is, in fact, the illegitimate son of Edwin Leaford, a man of considerable wealth. This revelation places Oliver at the center of a tangled web of inheritance and greed. Monks, Oliver's half-brother and Leaford's legitimate heir, emerges as a shadowy figure intent on ensuring that Oliver remains unaware of his true identity. Monks has been secretly collaborating with Fagin to keep Oliver in poverty and obscurity, fearing that the boy's legitimacy might threaten his claim to the family fortune. Monks' schemes come to light through a combination of Nancy's courageous actions and Mr. Brownlow's relentless investigation. Confronted with the truth, Monks is forced to admit his treachery. However, even as Oliver's rightful place in society is secured, the resolution comes at a great cost. Nance's betrayal of Fagin and Sikes does not go unnoticed. Despite her efforts to keep her actions secret, Sikes discovers her duplicity and, in a fit of rage, murders her. Nance's death is a tragic moment that underscores the brutality of the criminal world and the sacrifices made by those who dare to challenge it. The violent end of Sikes, who meets his own demise while attempting to evade capture, and the eventual arrest of Fagin bring a measure of justice to the story. Fagin's trial and subsequent execution serve as a grim reminder of the consequences of a life driven by greed and exploitation. Yet, amid the darkness, there is hope. Oliver, now under the protection of Mr. Brownlow and supported by Rose and Mrs. Mayline, is finally able to leave behind the life of hardship and danger that has defined his childhood. The conclusion of Oliver's journey is marked by themes of redemption and renewal. Mr. Brownlow formally adopts Oliver, providing him with the stable and loving home he has always longed for. Rose, too, finds happiness in her own life, marrying Harry Mayline, who sacrifices his political ambitions to be with her. Together, this new family begins to rebuild their lives, free from the shadows of the past. Despite the happiness that Oliver ultimately finds, the story leaves an indelible impression of the societal failures that allowed his suffering to occur. Through Oliver's trials, Charles Dickens offers a powerful critique of the workhouse system, the exploitation of children, and the indifference of the upper classes to the plight of the poor. Yet, he also celebrates the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of compassion and justice. As Oliver begins his new life, he carries with him the scars of his past, but also the promise of a future filled with hope and opportunity. His story is a testament to the possibility of overcoming adversity and the enduring importance of kindness in the face of cruelty. Oliver's journey, though fraught with hardship, ultimately affirms the value of perseverance and the belief that even in the darkest of times, there is light to be found.